So for those of you that may have to step away, this will be an event that lasts approximately an hour and a half. So if you have to step away, that's fine. We will be recording the event, and I will share the recording with everyone after the event. So I just want to make sure everyone knew about that. Also, a little bit of housekeeping. So obviously we're on Microsoft Teams. I'm going to ask that everyone mute themselves and turn off their video. The only folks that we will have on video this evening to minimize any distractions will be the team from Microsoft CSEO, so that we can kind of pay attention to them and their presentations and learn a little bit more about the organization. So I'd appreciate if everyone does that for me. And then also, you will have the opportunity to interact with the team from Microsoft. So if you have questions during the event, feel free to ask those questions in the chat window within Microsoft Teams. And then also we will have a live Q&A, and you'll have the chance to ask questions for the entire panel. And then I will moderate those questions as you type them into the chat. I will ask those questions to the different team members that will be presenting today. So without all that said, let's go ahead and get started. So Jesse, if you want to go ahead and start recording.
Yep, we'll good to go.
Okay, perfect. So let me go over quickly the agenda for the evening. First things first, I'm going to start by introducing myself and giving you a little bit of a history about our relationship with Microsoft. And then also I'm going to introduce our first speaker, who will be our keynote speaker, Patience Juji. So Patience will give you some background, not only about her experience at Microsoft, but a little bit about what she does and her path to Microsoft and what she does within CSEO. And then after Patience does a keynote, I will introduce the different team members that have so graciously taken their time out to share their experiences, share knowledge and insight about what they do within CSEO within Microsoft, and then get to know them a little bit better so that you can come up with some good questions to ask and learn more about the organization. And our hope is that you get excited about the opportunity and that you are interested in interviewing after this event. So I'm going to introduce the team one by one. Then we will have a panel discussion, which will be sort of like a fireside chat between Trabajamos and myself and the Microsoft CSEO team to learn a little bit more about the Microsoft company culture, the culture within CSEO, and a few good questions that I think you guys will find valuable. And then after that panel discussion, we'll do a live Q&A. So that'll be your opportunity to pose some interesting questions about the Microsoft culture, or maybe it's even about different specifics about the opportunities within CSEO. But you'll have that chance to ask questions. Just put your questions in the chat window. I will read off those questions to the team, and then we'll all be able to learn from their answers. And then after the live Q&A, we'll talk about next steps, and I'll introduce you to Jesse Sparks, who pretty much leads the relationship and the process for landing the interviews. So that will be the event agenda for this evening. And again, like I said, we will record this event and share with all participants afterwards. So let me give you a little bit of background about myself and our relationship with Microsoft, why I'm excited about this opportunity on your behalf and for you. My name is Will Moss. I'm actually the CEO of an organization called HBCU Connect, and also an organization called Trabajamos. So HBCU Connect is actually my baby. I started a company about 25 years ago, and the intent was to create sort of a social network for students and graduates of historically Black colleges and universities. We launched a partnership with Microsoft about 10 years ago, where we started to help Microsoft find more diverse talent from historically Black colleges and universities. And as we got that process into sort of a well-oiled machine to help minorities get jobs at Microsoft, we've expanded our relationship and focused more on providing opportunities not only for the African-American population within HBCUs, but also reaching out into the Latinx community to provide opportunities there. And for me, I have sort of a double or vested interest. Not only am I African-American and an HBCU graduate, but my kids would be considered Latinx. My kids are half Dominican. So yo no voy a hablar mi mal español, pero estoy muy animado para darte el bienvenido. Entonces, gracias a todos por estar con nosotros por este evento. So that's the extent of my Spanish. So I won't bore you guys with my Spanish, but I'm very happy and excited about this opportunity because Microsoft is, from our relationship that we've had with Microsoft over the years, I've come to admire Microsoft as a company because they value diversity. They value different backgrounds, different cultures, and they want to be inclusive. So this is an opportunity not to exclude anyone, but to make sure we include folks from different cultures, and specifically this event is targeted towards the Latinx community. So welcome. So that's a little bit about our partnership and a little bit about the opportunity for you. Just so you know, this is a real opportunity. So this is not just an info session where we're saying, hey, this is Microsoft, this is CSEO as well, and you can go to Microsoft.com and sign up for careers and blend in with the tens of thousands of people that are submitting applications on Microsoft.com. This is not that type of event. This is actually an intentional hiring event. So what we want you to do is take advantage of not only learning more about CSEO, learning more about Microsoft, but then hopefully you will be excited enough to want to interview, be open to opportunities no matter where they are within the company, from a geographical perspective, and then go through the interview process and potentially land a career with Microsoft soon after this event. So this is a real hiring event. That is the opportunity. So thank you all for coming. And with that, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker. So Patience Juji, she's a principal lead of program managers and finance and IT within Microsoft. Welcome, Patience.
Thank you so much, Will, and hello, everyone. So I'm going to share my screen now, and let me know when you can see it. So the first slide will be very familiar. It's the same slide as Will just shared, but then I'll go into a little bit more detail. So thanks again, everybody, for joining. Again, my name is Patience, and I lead a team of program managers in the CSEO organization. I'm super excited to be with you today. I've been at Microsoft for 15 years. I was born and raised in France, and I moved to the US to pursue my MBA, or Master in Business Administration in Finance. A year later that I graduated, I was hired at Microsoft as a financial analyst. During the first 8 years of my career, I worked as a financial and business analyst. And basically, my role consisted in managing the end-to-end contract onboarding of partners, which provided data content for the Microsoft side, such as MSN or Bing. So I was managing the financial compliance of the transaction, planning and tracking the budget. I moved to a program manager role after I came back from my second maternity leave. Do you know the feeling that you have when you are invited at a party, but you're thinking, will someone miss me if I was not there? This is exactly how I felt after I came back from my maternity leave. And I think it was a sign that I needed to move on to a different position. And right at that time, a program manager position was opening in my team. So I decided to try it. And also, I always wanted to work closer with engineers. So that was an opportunity for me. So this is one of the things that I really like at Microsoft. You have opportunities to change career if you want to. So I joined the CSEO organization around the same time that I became a program manager. And my role as a program manager was to manage the implementation of technology solution for the corporate tax team of Microsoft. So I was able to combine my finance background with a program manager engineering background. And I was leading projects such as tax calculation engine implementation, basically making sure that we had automated, scalable, and agile processes to ensure that Microsoft was compliant with the global tax regulations. And in summary, to make sure that our CEO would not go to jail due to tax fraud. I also worked in the incentive compensation domain as a program manager, and in this space, I led initiative to improve the tools that the Microsoft sales team uses to sell Microsoft product externally, and making sure that the sales team was set up for success with the proper tools that they needed to also calculate the incentives that they were getting based on their sales. So currently, my role is to manage a team of program manager, and we are leading the digital transformation of the royalty space. You're going to hear digital transformation a lot when we talk about CSEO. What we're doing in the space that I'm managing, we are developing a platform that is leveraging the blockchain technology to create a network of partners. And the goal is to provide faster, transparent, and digitized payment processes. Our role really is to streamline the partner experience and the royalties payment processes for the company that provides services and product to Microsoft. So now I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the core service engineering and operation structure. So let me move on to the next slide. And let's walk through this structure. Here we go. All right. So what do we do in CSEO? We lead the digital transformation so our customers can achieve more. We bring technical and business expertise, customer insight, and a clear point of view so that we can pursue the big ideas that inspire technological advances. We inspire our customers, and we help Microsoft teams work smarter and faster every day. I know there's a lot of background noise now, so if you're not on mute, please mute yourself. I would appreciate that. Thank you. So within the under CSEO, so as you can see on this slide, just to show kind of the different groups. So Satya, our CEO, then we have Kurt Delbini, and then we have the CSEO group under that. And I know some of you might have heard about the departure of Kurt Delbini, one of our dear leaders from Microsoft. So for now, at least, we are considering the situation as is. We're not going to go into more detail as to what's next, but the organization is still very strong and still very much needed some good talents such as yourself. So we have about 6 groups within CSEO. The first one, the corporate function engineering team on the far left that you can see, this is where I work, the CFE team. This is my group. I work in the finance organization. And the role of the CFE organization is to run Microsoft in a compliant way. And as you can hear, the corporate function, we support each of the corporate function of Microsoft, such as finance, human resources, legal, professional services. The next organization we have is the sales, marketing, and shared experience. And these organizations support the technology of our Salesforce and our Microsoft Store. Like one of the big initiatives that happened last year with this organization was to help the transition of our Microsoft Store to the online experience. I think some of you might have heard about Microsoft closing the physical store back early in the summer. Well, this team had to manage that transition to the online experience, and they did a pretty good job on this. Next, we have the core platform engineering team, and this organization mainly manage our ERP, our SAP platform, which is very critical because this is where we have all of our financial accounting record for Microsoft. Next, the end user service engineering team. So this organization is driving the digital transformation of the workplace because we need to make sure that each Microsoft employee has all the tools they need to do their job and be productive. This is what this team is focused on. The digital security and risk engineering, or DSRE, is protecting our system and proactively anticipate or prevent any attacks or data breach. You might have heard about the SolarWinds attack that happened back in December. So you can assume that this team has been very busy making sure that the Microsoft system were safe during this attack. Finally, we have the Microsoft Business Operation team, and this team mainly manage the product and service launch, which is very critical because we really need to make sure that from an end-to-end, when we have a product or service to be launched, we have this streamlined process. And we also make sure that we stay compliant in this process. And this is what this team makes sure they do. So I'm really, really excited to work for the CSC organization because our role is, again, to drive the digital transformation, which is a really key role for the company. And we also are helping our partners in this mission. But there are other reasons why I'm also excited to work at Microsoft. And one of them is because Microsoft, over the past, I would say 5 years, really has gone through a culture transformation, I would say. And two things that I want to highlight with you is I want to start with the value. So the values for me, it's very important that my values aligned with my company values. And Microsoft really over the past 5 years has demonstrated to me that yes, I work for a company where my values are aligned. So let's start with respect, accountability, integrity. Those are values that Microsoft is emphasizes across the company. And this is to ensure that we have an environment where employees are respectful, are interacting in a respectful way, are accountable for their words and their action. Second, the diversity and inclusion. I mean, as a woman of color working in technology, this is absolutely top of mind. And the effort that Microsoft have done are really just not words written on paper. They have taken serious action. One of them, as part of our annual review, each employee is required to have a diversity and inclusion priority that can be measured. And as a woman of color, again, it's very important for me to work in a company where I feel that I have the same chances as everyone else to succeed. And that also other people, other minorities, or everybody really has those chances. And I feel that at Microsoft. Next, Microsoft is a good corporate citizen. What do I mean by that? Talking about the diversity and inclusion, I'm going to come back to really all the terrible tragedies last year that affected the African American Black community. And Microsoft around June, Satya Nadella, our CEO, announced a plan to double the representation of African American Black employees in the company and to grow these employees as well, but also to support the external community. I mean, this is a big deal. And this is really a company putting their mouth where their actions are. I also care about the planet, and Microsoft does too. And Microsoft committed to be carbon negative by 2030 and remove all historical carbon emission by 2050. I mean, that's the type of company that I want to work for. So my second major point why I love working for Microsoft is the growth mindset. I mean, at Microsoft, it is encouraged to be a learn it all and not a know it all. Learning is encouraged on the job. I mean, we have multiple learning platform, whether it's LinkedIn Learning or any other thing. I mean, all of my entire Master of Information System was financed by Microsoft through tuition reimbursement. So for me, it's super important that I have a company that is invested in my career. And that investment in my career is also through having a career development plan. All of the every employee is encouraged to have a career development plan. So hiring is important, of course. This is what we're doing today. We want to hire talent like all of you. But what do we do about the retention? It is important to keep the employee excited about their work and invest in their growth and keep them challenged. I mean, it's really that career development plan that each employee has to have is a destination to your GPS. You need to know where you're going. I mean, one of my favorite sentences is failing to plan is planning to fail. And that career development plan is exactly what it does. It's the employee planning so they can be successful. And Microsoft is 100% behind that. And finally, the hackathon. I mean, I think in the hackathon, I'm capturing a lot of things, not only the annual hackathon that Microsoft has every summer, but also the multiple hackathon that we have across the company. I mean, just my team, we had a hackathon back in December. We have another one planned for actually the CFE organization sometime in the spring. And we are constantly encouraged to innovate, to try new things, to experiment, and to keep our growth mindset while we do that. So really, for all of these reasons that I shared, I really enjoyed being at Microsoft, and yeah, I hope some of you will join me very soon. But thank you so much for listening, and I'll hand it over back to you, Will.
Patience. So is it okay if I ask you a couple of questions?
Absolutely, yeah.
So you really hit the nail on the head on my number one question, which is why do you feel Microsoft is a great place to work for you personally? I mean, you really dove into that. So I want to ask you a little bit more about your path into Microsoft. So a lot of times, I have a software engineering background. So for me, coming out of college, getting some experience, I went through the interview process with Microsoft. I did get an offer, but I ended up running my company instead of going to work for Microsoft. But for me, that was like the dream. As a software engineer, it was like the dream job. So, you know, we have a lot of software engineers on the call and some folks also interested in program management, as always. So for you, how did you get your foot in the door at Microsoft?
You know, I started as a vendor. So back in 2005, without telling much more about my age, but back in 2005, I started as a vendor. So I had a temporary position as a financial analyst. And then I was offered a full-time position. So that's how it happened. But I have to say that as a vendor, and I don't know if any of you will be in that situation, but the work you do as a vendor will also help if you want to get that full-time position, because the quality of the work, how you interact and how you deliver, I think that's something that helped me as well.
Excellent. So another question I like to ask is a little bit about background, because a lot of folks on the call are from different locations. We even have folks that are from Latin America that may not have been born even in the States. And so the question is always, you know, where are the opportunities located? So where do you currently work? You know, out of what location? And then where did you come from? Did you have to relocate to that location?
I actually work in Redmond, Washington, so on the main campus. And I didn't have to relocate, but I actually had my degree back in Minneapolis, Minnesota. That's where I had my MBA. And then I moved to Redmond, and a year after I was hired at Microsoft. So I didn't have to go through the relocation because I was already on site. Yeah.
Excellent. So really appreciate you taking the time out to keynote for us to share your experiences. So I'll ask that you hold on and join us for the panel discussion. But with that, I'll go ahead and introduce our next speaker. So let me share my my screen once again. So our next speaker is going to be Michael Rose. Michael is a principal software engineering manager within end user services engineering. So Michael, if you're ready, I'll hand it over to you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. As Will just mentioned, I'm a software engineering manager. I manage a team of about 20 plus people, indirectly a couple of other managers too. My background is very interesting in the sense I find it difficult to explain when people ask me where I'm from. I'm originally born and brought up in India. I have 4 different grandparents. I have no real true unique nationality, but I have 4 grandparents from 4 different countries. Because India was ruled by the British for 200 years, I have a British grandmother, my father's mother. Part of India was ruled by Portuguese, so I have a Portuguese grandfather, my father's father. Part of India was ruled by the French, so I have a French grandmother from my mother's side and an Indian father, so grandfather. So I have 4 different grandparents. I was born in India, studied in Australia, worked for a few years in the Middle East, a country called Dubai, and another country, Kuwait, migrated to Canada, and now living in the United States. So I call myself multinational. The only thing is I don't qualify as a diverse candidate, but I travel a lot. I have 5 kids, all born in 5 different countries. What you see in that little picture is a pair of twins I have who were born in Washington State. I completed my master's in computer science and followed up with a degree in accountancy and financial management and auditing. I complete 22 years at Microsoft in April, and I would like to spend a little time giving all of you some context as to my journey in Microsoft. So before joining Microsoft, I already had 9 years of experience in different countries. And I never dreamt that I would stick with one company for 22 years almost. And there's a reason why along that journey, when I first joined Microsoft, I joined in Microsoft Canada as a developer consultant because Microsoft had dev consultants, and I would go to customer sites and help them debug unmanaged code in COM and low-level stuff. So my passion and interest is in systems programming. And so I was really interested in doing a lot more of that type of engineering. And the only place I could get that opportunity was out of Redmond, where all the big groups like Windows and Visual Studio were at. So I interviewed, and there's a big difference between interviewing 20 years ago to move to Redmond and now. I think it's a lot easier now. We had to go through 6 interviews. And interesting story, because I was traveling from Toronto to Washington, I actually did 5 interview loops in 5 days, and each day was about 8 hours. And so I interviewed, and every team had between 6 and 7 as appropriate interviews. So I ended up that week doing about probably 30 interviews. And I finally got a couple of offers to move and relocated to Redmond, and I haven't regretted it since. It's probably been the best decision of my career. There's a reason why I still am at Microsoft. The first 10 years I spent in what we use called till today called product groups, where we built backend servers. If you're familiar with servers like Exchange Server, SharePoint Server, Commerce Server, there was a product which is today part of cloud called BizTalk Server. It has been fragmented into different components in Azure today. When you think about message bus and service bus, all those components and orchestrations and workflows come from that product that I helped build for about 5+ years. My background being system engineering, I'm very passionate about performance and throughput and latency and scale and designing systems for enterprise criteria. So with that, I guess I still today can write code in assembler x86, and I'm very interested in C# and .NET, more on the IL side or intermediate language. So my passion for engineering kept me in those groups for more than 10 years. And about 10 years ago, I moved to what was called Microsoft IT. That about 3 years ago evolved into this journey that I like to call CSEO. The most interesting takeaway I have is the contrast between the first 10 years and the last 10 years and how the company has changed. And one of the reasons why I still am here and haven't moved on. There's lots of temptations in my career to come and join other companies. We have lots of competition. One reason I stayed at Microsoft, obviously I joined for the technology, the cool cutting edge stuff that Microsoft has been known for. But the last 10 years have kept me here because of the culture. The pivot that the company made more than 7, almost 10 years ago to the emphasis on people. People as in, I think you just heard and saw patients talk about diversity and inclusion, and not for the sake of diversity. It's not for checking a box. We have so many African Americans, so many Hispanic candidates. No, it's the diversity of the experience, the thought, the brain power they bring, the difference in the way they think in designing and architecting and the experience. And I've been for the last 5 years participating in a lot of these hiring events between Mexico City and uh, certain other places, but candidates from all over Latin America, including Venezuela, Puerto Rico. And I'm really excited, just as a side note, to have one of the people of the dozens of uh, Latin American employees that I have brought into CSEO, who I invited as if needed, if she can help. April Gonzalez is on this call. She joined us last year in her first year experience. If you have questions, she might be able to give you a better context as to what it's been like. But just to close pretty quickly, my reason for staying in Microsoft is the emphasis on the people, the value on the work I do, the change in the first 10 years and the last 10 years where Microsoft has moved from this very competitive, which still is today competitive, but in a respectful manner. We value the work of every employee. We switched from being a uh, competitive workplace where people competed with each other in a destructive way to today where we are rewarded and our careers grow based on how much we contribute to others' success and leverage others. That makes for a truly fun workplace. I look at myself every morning and say, do I want to go to work? Because there are different reasons why people go to work, and I'm excited to go to work because of the
Jake
people
was
I work
really hungry,
beside.
man.
Sorry?
Jake was really hungry.
If everyone
Yeah.
that's not presenting, if you could turn off your or mute your microphone. Sorry about that.
Sorry. Yeah, so I look at my job as to, am I really looking at it as a job that I have to wake up and pull myself out of bed, or the previous night I'm getting excited because I have some meeting to attend, some people, some design, some architecture to contribute to. So it's the people that really bring me, and I would like to close with one sentence. A few years ago, I heard a very senior leader ask this very tough question. what would you choose given a choice between the technology and the stack and the cool group or the people? Maybe not so cool technology. And this person without blinking said, it's the people. The technology will come and go, it'll change, but the people will be the ones who I truly trust to build and engineer the future success. And that's what motivates me. It's the people I work beside, and I never want to be the smartest person in the room because then I'm not learning. So I love Microsoft because of the opportunity it's given me, and it continues to surprise me with all the learning opportunities. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions people may have later on, and welcome to one of the best journeys you may be embarking on in your life.
Thank you. So you're actually the first person that I've met on one of many of these events where you are a dev consultant. So when I actually had the offer to work for Microsoft, I was going to be in that same role here in Columbus, Ohio. So excited to learn about your background. So I wanted to ask a couple of follow-up questions because I know we have a lot of folks or candidates on the call that are interested in particularly what your team might do. And then, what technologies your team uses from a software development perspective.
Sure. So my team is part of, if you remember patient slide, end user services engineering, and we are part of the digital transformation. The cool part of the work that my team is responsible for is digitizing our campus of the future. And some of the experiences we touch on is meeting experiences, for example, transportation experience, lobby experiences, and we take our technology stack like Office and Exchange and Outlook, and we've built already, this is not future vision, we built experiences where with BLE devices in every building on every floor, where we can help with wayfinding. We use IoT and bots and literally HoloLens through phones where you can get directions. We can detect based on motion sensors, meeting room availability, draw heat maps of buildings, and find out parking lot spaces based on camera streams. So the technology stack we touch is very broad. We deal with a lot of data but we literally light up many different experiences. So there's big data, there's ML, there is UX and UI, there is mobile experiences. So it's a very broad horizontal stack, but we leverage almost every technology Microsoft produces, and a lot of what we produce becomes part of Azure, part of Office, part of the product group stack that ultimately becomes part of what a customer can leverage, experience, and make real in their enterprise space.
So I may be jumping the gun because I usually save this question for the panel discussion, but I think it's super relevant potentially to your team. So when COVID-19 affected us, in 2020, back in March, and everyone started to go from working in the office to working from home, how did that affect your team and some of the priorities of what your team might have worked on if you're responsible for like the work environment?
Yes, so we work very closely with what we call RENS, real estate and facilities. And our team was very quickly asked to spin up services and applications to help employees with remote working. Uh, we had a Teams product that we're all on this that we use extensively, that we influence a lot from my group, that had to scale dramatically overnight from tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands to tens of millions of users worldwide. So we provided support for some of that worldwide, but for within the company, we had to create tools and applications for employees to self-attest, to track employees, to let people know how they can come in and give feed. But those were because of the breadth and depth of the technology stack of people we had. We could very quickly, in a matter of days and hours, build these very quick RAD applications and services that we could light up for the rest of the company. Because if you are not familiar, Microsoft is a company with presence in over 100 countries, and whatever we build has to be able to cater to all different countries and policies and needs. And it was exciting, but it was also cool that we had to do things so quickly. And we're still working on how we come back to work when COVID is behind us and what sort of a flexible environment that will be. So it's a really cool opportunity in our org to contribute to this whole surprise that has been thrown upon the world.
So one last question, and you may have touched on this a little bit already, but I would love to sort of close or wrap up with this question for you. why do you feel Microsoft is a great place for you to work personally? What is it that you like most about working for Microsoft?
What I like most is I've been a technology buff all my life, and it was a dream to be able to join a company like Microsoft. What I really liked is the flexibility. I joined many companies, but it still feels like one company. There's only one Microsoft. There's Xbox, there's gaming, there's services, there's cloud computing, there's compilers, there's operating systems, there's virtual reality and HoloLens and R&D. But it's still, I know that I feel like there's only one company I work for. And the flexibility I have. 10 years ago, it was very difficult for me to switch teams. But over the last 7 or 8 years, Microsoft made it more important that the emphasis was on the employee, where I could switch teams, and I've switched many jobs within Microsoft in my career, and they made it almost seamless. I didn't have to ask my manager for permission. Can I apply for that job? I didn't have to wait 18 months. I could just go apply for a job and then let my manager know I'm leaving. I didn't need permission. I didn't work for that person. I worked for Microsoft. And I think that flexibility and the cool opportunities, the breadth opportunities is what makes it exciting and why I'm still here.
Excellent. So just as a reminder, Michael has been with the company for at least 21 years at Microsoft.
Yes.
So we really appreciate you taking the time out to share your experiences. And with that, I'll ask that you hang on for the panel discussion. But then I'd like to go ahead and introduce our next speaker. All right.
Thanks, Will.
Thank you. Okay, so our next speaker is Wilfredo Cruz. Wilfredo is a senior software engineering manager. Wilfredo is from Puerto Rico. So Wilfredo, if you're ready, I'll pass the presentation over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Will. My name is Wilfredo Cruz. I'm part with DSRE, the organization that patients mentioned that we do the security engineering. I've been in Microsoft for 10 years. I did twice an internship is how I got to Microsoft. And then I joined over here as a university hire. After that, I spent around, it was like 5 or 6 years doing software development and had a conversation with my manager that I wanted to grow and learn to be a manager. Created a plan, learned how to be a PM. I spent a year and a half, I think, being a PM just to understand the other side of the role of the work that we do. And after that, the opportunity to grow in the same organization, and I became a manager, and now I'm a manager of 11 people in my team, still with the same work, still with the same manager, I still report to the same manager. She's been my mentor throughout my career. She has helped me grow through the many years that I've been in Microsoft.
Excellent. So you're from Puerto Rico. So born and raised. So I had the pleasure after I graduated from college. I was a software engineer, computer science major. Some work I did in college, I got to fly to Puerto Rico to the University of Puerto Rico Mayagüez, and I got to learn about the campus. It was my first time to Puerto Rico, which really changed my life forever. So I want to have like my first follow-up question with you about. So you went to the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez.
Yep.
You're from Puerto Rico. You had to relocate. You were part of internship programs with Microsoft. You ended up working for Microsoft after you graduated in CSEO. You've been with the organization ever since. So obviously it's a great organization to be a part of. But what was it like for you to relocate from Puerto Rico to the Pacific Northwest?
Well, not gonna lie, it was not easy the first day. I arrived here kind of like in the winter time for us. It was December for my first internship. I saw snow my first week here. Jorge was there. Actually, it's funny to have Jorge here. We know each other for many years now. Seeing snow for the first time coming from my little island where the weather is like the picture that I have on my background was kind of like an amazing opportunity for me. Hard at the beginning, not knowing a lot of people, not having a lot of people that look, behave, or have the kind of environment that I had back home where family and everything is. Tough, very, very tough. But I got used to it, and I have to say I wouldn't change it. Love the weather here. I know everybody immediately asks, how's the weather in Washington? Love it here because you get a different opportunity. In Puerto Rico, we're used to have seen either summer or summer, where most of the weather it's fairly the same. Now I get to see different kinds of weather. I get to see different snow. I get rain. I get the mountains. I get something that they call a beach here, which doesn't look like this, but it's something. So it's a different environment, and you learn and you adapt. You create new friends. part of being with Hola chapter and other Latinos, I have learned to create a different family, of course, here. So you adapt. You met other people. I actually met many Puerto Ricans here. It's funny that a little island has so many peoples here, and you create a different kind of family at that point.
So you touched on being a part of Hola. So can you explain to the candidates, what is Hola and how are employee resource groups leveraged and how has it been useful to you?
We have different, and somebody asked in the chat how many we have. We have many different ones depending on different backgrounds or the diversity that you want to consider yourself. We're very inclusive. We have people that are part of the Hola chapter that not necessarily speak Spanish, but they have family or they come from families that are Latino and things like that, right? It has been a tremendous help for me in my personal and my professional career because I get to be with people that understand some of the struggles that we struggle, that understand some of the problems that we have faced or the background that we have, right? In the personal matter, I have met a lot of friends that taught me how to ski or taught me how to drive a boat here in Washington, which was an experience itself. In a professional setting, people like Jorge, which is my mentor, and others have helped me understand what perspective we bring and how being different like we are and the strengths that we bring into the conversation can help us grow our career also. Plus, they also help you to find new experiences or connect the company. Sometimes because people outside of work, it helps you be like, hey, manager, I know this other team that is doing it this other way. Maybe we should try it or we should bring and leverage their work or their technology. So being part of those smaller V teams and organization kind of like help both in the mental aspect of the job of the day-to-day, but also in the professional aspect of trying to bridge and create a connection in such a wide and big company like Microsoft.
So I know you have a software engineering background, right?
Yeah.
So can you speak to a little bit about what it was like for you to come in as a software engineer, the types of projects you worked on, and then how you ended up becoming a senior software engineering manager?
Sure. My background is actually in computer engineering in Puerto Rico. Back then, we didn't have software engineer. We did a little bit of hardware and software as part of the background. When I came here, I want to say the biggest challenge was that none of the technologies that we use at that point in my team were the ones that I use in the university. It was a Java open source background. I did a lot of PHP and HTML versus I came here and it was C#, MVC, and others. But I think that my manager and many of my mentors always taught me that logic it's more important than any language. We speak more than one language. I personally speak 3 languages in my real life. And then you go into computers and you change languages, and as the year progresses, new languages will come in. But that logic and understanding how we're trying to solve problems, which in our case sometimes are a little bit outside of the box because of the scale and the kind of customers that we have, it's a lot more important. So over the years, I have learned. I keep learning every day. I want to say that I always push my team and everybody who reports to me that keeping up to date with technology, learning how different product teams are doing it and how the cutting edge of technology. Us in security are always fighting with what we call the bad guys, I guess. Our opponents in security tend to have a lot more money and a lot more resources than we do. So we have to be very effective with the work that we do. And we have to be really good at evolving ourselves and understanding what is the landscape and how we can evolve with the landscape to keep up to date. Because if not, we will be dinosaurs. In a matter of a year, all the technology will change, our adversaries will change their techniques, and if we don't evolve, we'll be always falling behind.
So I've got 2 more questions for you. One with regard to, you started to touch on it a little bit about, so we've got a lot of software engineers interested in opportunities with Microsoft from a Latino background, right? So so diverse professionals interested in coming to work for Microsoft, but sometimes people from the outside think Microsoft is the interview process can be intimidating, especially the example that Michael Rose shared about interviewing that many times in 1 week. So can you talk a little bit about what it's like to interview as a software engineer to get into the company now?
Yeah. I want to clear the ways. What Michael explained was 20 years ago. That has changed a lot, and thank God it has evolved over the years. I don't think that even as an interviewer, I don't think I want to participate in such a long drilling. I think that I'm one I can speak about security and DSRE. I'm trying to push a different way of doing interviews where we concentrate more on scenario focus rather than specific questions. You will get the typical algorithm questions as a starting breaking point, right? And to know that you know your background. But I prefer to start talking about the day-to-day and how you handle scenarios on the day-to-day. I try to take my candidate through a project that we did a couple of years ago and try to understand some of the things that happened during that project and some of the, I want to call exceptions or edge cases that happened during that project, and see how they will handle those and see how they can think, maybe not necessarily on the fly, but adapt to a situation. I have had amazing interviews with people that might never have used any of our technologies, maybe not the Azure stack, but maybe AWS, or maybe they're not used to Windows event viewer, but they're used to the Linux one. And concentrate on the logic and concentrate on the ideas more than necessarily the algorithms and how to solve it. Because I have learned that over the years, those scenarios will come with the day-to-day, and maybe the interview, if it didn't work out, it might not be just you're not an expert. It might be that you don't fit necessarily with the culture and you're happy with the team, right? I always say that the employee has to be really happy with the team in order to do their best. And sometimes it's actually really good that either you did not fit or you did not get the role, because you get one better after. But getting to that scenario focus and getting to that day-to-day kind of like help us both from the employee perspective understand how we work as a team, and from us the manager perspective how the employee will evolve and how we will fit with the team that they're going to be working on.
Excellent. So my last question for you, and one of my favorite questions to ask, is what is it for you that you like most about working for Microsoft?
That's an interesting one. I think over the years they have changed. I would say that if you ask me when I was an intern and they say, hey, we have an offer for you to work for Microsoft, I saw how much I was going to get paid, and I did not even think about it. Not going to lie, it was coming from the background that I come from, that paycheck was more important than almost anything. Over the years, it has evolved. I thought there would be a starting point for me and just work for Microsoft for a few years just for the paycheck. And then the versatility, the dynamics, how the day-to-day ended up, how many challenges I had to face on a work environment that I have to learn and evolve with it, helped me and my always curious mind to get a new challenge every day. So I want to say that over my first few years was more about the curiosity and learning. As I evolve in my career, I love that my mentor helped me grow in my career and helped me achieve what I wanted to be as a manager. And I want to say during the last few years after Hurricane Maria that many of you have heard, my island was really destroyed, and I saw how Microsoft reacted, helping their employees, not just the full-time employees, but also the temporary employees. In my personal life, I can share that Microsoft helped me bring my family, that even though it was not my immediately wife and children, but more like my sister and her family, to bring over here because of everything that was happening on the island. And the reaction that Microsoft had to COVID and how we're helping employees all over the world to deal with this COVID pandemic, it has made me grow very proud of the company and some of the decisions that are very centric on the employees and the people, not necessarily just on the business. And I say that during a pandemic like this, we can see how companies react to their core if they really care more about the money than the people. And I can proudly say that Microsoft truly care about their employees, and for us to do well as a company where the employee is the first and most important resource there.
Excellent, excellent. So thank you, Wilfredo. So I'll ask that you hang on for the panel discussion, but I'll go ahead and move into introducing our next speaker. So let me refocus the spotlight. So our next speaker is Dan Babb. Dan is a principal software engineering manager for end user services engineering. So Dan, if you're ready.
I am ready. Sorry about the delay on the mute. It seems like it's the biggest thing people do with Teams. So,
Well,
I started at Microsoft about 7 years ago, and you can see from my past roles there, I have served in quite a few different roles here at Microsoft. I started as a PM. I became a service engineer. Then I had an opportunity to become a service engineering manager, and then I became a software engineering manager, and then I just moved on in the progression of my career to being a principal software engineering manager. So I manage a team of 9 people. We focus on doing data. We actually work quite a bit with Michael Rose's team. We're part of kind of the larger focus when it comes to like scenarios and the services. So we own the charter for how we establish ML models, doing AI, getting analytics insights to business teams, anything that has to do with data. So most of the engineers on my team, they think of themselves more as data engineers opposed to software engineers, even though they all have backgrounds in software engineering. They mainly spend their time writing in Python. They do some C# when it's needed, but most of the work we do is out of Azure Databricks or Spark, and so Python's the language we use to do that. Our focus has mainly been in the team space, so a lot of the improvements and insights that come into teams from a quality or a reliability perspective is usually data that's been mined through my team that we pass on through our broader seamless teamwork counterparts, and they then go to deliver those insights to the product groups, or in this case, the team's product group. Before I was doing data engineering, and when I was a service engineer, I was actually still doing data in the same place, but it was just focused solely on, at the time, it was Skype for Business instead of Teams. So we went through the entire journey of figuring out what was wrong with Skype for Business, and then identifying those points, building some relationships with other engineering teams and the product groups, and then spinning our views on how we can improve that service itself. And then out of that came the evolution to Teams and this move to an entirely different backend architecture. So the experience at Microsoft has been amazing for me, because prior to that, so going back to the very beginning, I started an ISP in Redding, California, when I was a sophomore in high school. I was the person that figured out how to get everything connected. At the time, they had a BBS server for those folks that are a little younger. BBS, but preceded the internet.
That's how I got started.
Yeah. So I was pretty active on that channel, or in our BBS server, and I had a couple guys who owned a computer repair shop, and they asked me if I was interested in helping them start an ISP, because they wanted to add enough customers so they could play video games at work, which I thought was awesome at the time, being 15. So I got involved, and we launched the ISP, and for a while it was just like friends and family, because the computer business was, basically making all the revenue. But then I want to say like in 97 or 98, it blew up. We went from like 100 users to about 10,000 users, which is pretty big growth back in the day. I know Microsoft, that's really small scale, but it was a 3-man business. So that's where I got my start. I did that up until about 2001. I joined the military. I left everything from Reading, joined the military, served my term during the first parts of the conflicts we started after 9/11, and then I got out. I did some consulting on the East Coast. I did work in the data centers, and then I moved back to the West Coast, and that's where I actually got involved in a pretty different industry, the restaurant business. So I was the IT director for a smaller company that had several franchises. Applebee's or Burger King are probably the most popular ones you might have heard of. So over there is where I kind of really got my chops into business and operations. When I started at the company, it was maybe 2008 or 7. They were still like faxing reports to the head office and having someone type them into a unified Excel sheet to print off to give to management. So they didn't even use email or stuff like that. So I spent 6 years there reworking infrastructure, point of sale systems, networking. And when I left, it was real-time systems to all the senior management. I'd say near time, not real time, but able to call and adjust labor in 15-minute increments in near time that's happening at restaurants. So for the restaurant industry, it was what I would call, they didn't realize they were going through what we now call the digital transformation, but that's exactly what it was. And we used Microsoft technology to do all of that at the time. And then actually from there I moved to Microsoft, and I kind of joined Microsoft through a pretty unorthodox way. I am a pretty avid online gamer, and I got an interview. Well, I got a referral from a friend that was playing World of Warcraft with me. I was actually in the Microsoft Guild for World of Warcraft, and so I had mentioned that, work was getting a little boring. He's like, well, why don't you come be a product manager or a program manager here at Microsoft? You can just organize a whole bunch of stuff. And it was pretty intimidating because I've never, ever thought I would be able to come and work at a company called Microsoft, like an enterprise level company, because the biggest thing I'd ever been a part of was the Air Force, which is the government. And then after that, it's this restaurant company. So I came and did my interview, and it's not like it is today, but it was definitely not what Michael went through either. So I went through, and I had a lot of friends that were, here at Microsoft. So they were kind of explaining the concept to me, and, it was not cheating, but getting a little bit of inside information. So the biggest thing that they really stressed to me was thinking out loud, and it goes back to what Wilfredo was talking about. When I interview today, I am looking at scenarios as well. I want people to think through what they're talking about. I'm not so interested in whether you're getting the question right or wrong. I just want to know logically how you are arriving at what you're trying to achieve. And I'm looking for progress, not perfection. And I'm looking for your ability to iterate. I'm looking for your ability to think outside the box, things like that. So I guess I'm kind of derailing here. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at. And to answer your question, Horde, I was an undead warrior, top tier rating kill.
Excellent. I love the story. I was going to ask you a little bit about your background. Sounds similar to my own. I got started I became a software developer because I fell in love with connecting to bulletin board systems, and had to write a program to be able to do it because I didn't have a floppy disk on my computer. So every time I wanted to connect to a BBS, I had to write a software program. So I thought that was very interesting. I wanted to ask, so your team, you said one of the technologies you use or languages you use is Python.
Yes.
So is that typically what the skill set that you look for new software engineers that come into your team?
No, not at all. I recently, so I would say another part I would actually talk about of my 9 people, we have a pretty diverse group. And I don't just mean that from your ethnicity background. I have people senior in their career, super earlier in their career. Actually, the most recent person to join my team was someone that Michael recruited 5 or 6 months ago. So when she came in, she didn't know how to write Python, but she learned, over time as she joined. So a lot of the things that we do at Microsoft and the languages you're going to use, depending on the team, are either relatively new or they're on the more bleeding edge of things. So, it's also more about, can you logically understand what we're doing, and can you work your way through that? No manager at Microsoft is going to, cut you because you didn't pick up a new language in 2 weeks or a sprint or something like that. Everybody's here on a journey, and everybody's looking for progress, not perfection. And we're also all learning. So that's what, I expect out of the people that come to work on my team. And I would think come to work at Microsoft, you should just be ready for things you don't know, and you should be looking to embrace that ambiguity and trying to find the best path forward on how you can make it real for yourself, because that's all anybody's expecting of you.
So my favorite question, what is it that you personally like most about working for Microsoft?
The breadth of things that we do. I have worked on things in Windows and the Surface teams. I've worked on Teams. I have been deep into ML stuff we do. I have been across all of the M365 services. There is literally an endless option to choose from when you come to doing the stuff you're doing here. So, and if you don't like what you're doing, it doesn't mean that you have to leave your team. You can have a conversation with your manager and just get put onto something else, that's been prioritized from, the goals we've set or the vision we're being led from. And sometimes it does mean finding another team, but, Microsoft is super flexible with stuff like that. It's not a big it's not a big issue to leave to go to another team. No one holds it against you. I mean, everybody's here to kind of find their own opportunities. And if the thing you're doing right now isn't doing it for you, your manager wants to help you find that next opportunity, because it's important that, you grow as a person. And that's part of our job, is to leverage that to make sure that all these cool choices and these awesome things you can do here at Microsoft are open to you. And so, but that's the thing I like the most about Microsoft.
Excellent. So I'll ask you to hold on to join us on our panel discussion, and as we answer some live Q&A. But last but not least, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who is Jorge Valenga. So let me switch over to my slides. And Jorge, if you're ready, Jorge is actually a senior software engineering manager for Microsoft Corporate, External, and Legal Affairs. So Jorge, if you're ready.
Well, hello, everybody. As Will said, my name is Jorge Valenga. I was born and raised in Mexico. That's where I went to school. I have my bachelor's in electronic engineering from the Tech of Monterey. I've been here at Microsoft now. That number has changed to 15 years now. So they keep ticking the years, and they do feel like weight at some point. Um, uh, the roles that I've had, I started here as a role that no longer exists in paper. Is called SDET, software design engineer in test. After that, I moved over to solution management, program management. Then I went over to service management or service engineering. Then I moved back to software engineering, and I'm in software engineering manager. And really, I put all those in there to summarize 14 years of continuously doing new things, continuously changing your career, shaping to learn the different angles of how software gets built. And really, it was a very intentional design of my career to, it's what I call my journey of empathy. My journey of empathy to the different roles that different people do, so that whenever you're starting to collaborate with people, you understand where they're coming from, right? That was a very intentional thing that I did throughout my career. So in some cases, it was because stars aligned and the right person came to me and said, hey, we have this opportunity over here. It's exciting. I never had considered it. And then it's just like, okay, let's go do it. It's scary. You don't know how you're going to do it. It's completely foreign. You have no idea what is going on. And then you go through the journey. 3 years later, you go like, well, that wasn't that bad. I did pretty good. So yeah, that's one of the things, and I think most of the panelists mentioned it, right? Is the flexibility of being able to continue to grow and learn and things like that. That I just absolutely love about this place. That it is encouraged that you push yourself to grow and to be better and explore different challenges and different things. And the vastness of the ocean that you have available to yourself. I've worked in very different projects. A lot of the projects that Patience mentioned, I worked on at different times than she did. I've crossed paths also with Wilfredo in the past and different projects. So you get to experience many different things. And when I get to go to like a lot of conferences and things like that, people ask me, hey, why don't you find something outside of Microsoft so you can learn another industry or something like that? I go like, what am I not going to learn within Microsoft? The horizon is huge. Hey, you want to go and build mice? Hey, guess what? We built mice. We do everything: headphones, computers, high-scale operating systems, cloud, everything we build. So the ocean is really, really large. And now, as Michael explained earlier in quite a bit of detail, there's a lot of flexibility for you to explore new opportunities. So that is just so, it's one of the things that I tell a lot of people that are coming in, hey, you're in, now figure out where you want to go, right? Come in, do your job, kick butt, learn what you're gonna do, and figure out what is your next challenge. Don't lose your horizon, right? Just keep going at it. And I tell my team members, don't ever sacrifice your career for your role. So always keep thinking about where you want to go.
So speaking of roles, so I have a few questions for you. So just to piggyback off of that last point, what is it that you like most about your role there within CSEO?
The one that I have today, it's really the people that I get to work with. We do attract very brilliant people. We do attract very cool problem solvers, and I never cease. It never ceases to amaze me how creative some people are at solving problems. How something so complex that seems unsurmountable, we are able to go tackle it. The level of impact that we can have with the day-to-day work that we do, given the access to the technology, the scope, the data that we have is pretty large. In some of the roles that I've had, we get to touch numbers and transactions that are not very normal. Not a lot of people can, like, in one of the little journeys that I had as a service manager, I was accountable for over $1 trillion in transactions per year. That's large numbers, and that was a while ago. Which is the numbers keep growing, and earnings came out today, and the numbers keep growing. 17% growth. That's not bad. So the impact is pretty massive. We do internal stuff here in CSEO for inside the company, but the volume that we deal with is, most people would think that that's like commercial grade, right? So it's pretty cool.
Excellent. So another thing I wanted to ask you with regard to your background, right? So we have a lot of professionals from a Latin American background. You were born and raised in Mexico. So what was it like for you to transition from living in Mexico to now living in the Pacific Northwest? And then how did you get your foot in the door at Microsoft?
So I got my foot in the door thanks to a teacher. I owe this teacher a ton. Back in my university, there was Microsoft was coming to recruit, and I didn't even submit my resume because I was like, there's no way. There's just no way. And the teachers usually have a pretty good relationship with the recruiters, and the recruiters go like, hey, I have this stack of resumes. Who is not here that should be in here? And that teacher gave my name, and that teacher changed my life with that one action. I was able to interview for an internship. I came up here for a co-op back in, let's just call it many years ago. And then I got offered to come back here. And I still remember the day that I came up here for the first time. And I was in this thing we call NEO Employee Orientation, which is different today because of COVID. But back then, we used to get sent to Building 33, and there's this humongous room, bigger than any office that I've ever worked in. I sit down, and at the podium, there's that logo of Microsoft in that old cursive from 2005, and I still get goosebumps just thinking about that day. That's how I got here. I got here because of a teacher suggesting that I was interviewed, that it was going through the interview process, got the internship, and then I got the full-time employee.
Excellent. So I think this is like one of the really great things about this opportunity, because Microsoft and a lot of companies, they find students that are getting ready to graduate, and they connect with different universities, and then they recruit that way. But there's not always paths inside of a company after you're out of college, right? So I think that's a message for everyone that's participating in this call, that this is a path for you to get your foot in the door at Microsoft. So Microsoft CSEO, Core Services Engineering and Operations, is hiring. And so we're going to talk a little bit about those next steps. But Jorge, I really want to thank you for sharing your experiences. And I wanted to make sure to give some time to have a live Q&A and to have a panel discussion. So for everyone that's on the Microsoft team that has presented so far, if you want to turn on your video, what I'll do is I'll stop sharing my my presentation so that we can have a sort of a discussion and talk about some of your experiences working for CSEO.
And in the interest of time, I'll keep posting in the chat about next steps so that we have enough time for panel to keep going.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I wanted to kind of I like to take some time out to have a conversation between Trabajamos and Microsoft on behalf of the candidates, to ask some questions about the culture there within CSEO and there within Microsoft. So with regard to CSEO, so I've noticed that different presenters have been a part of different teams within Microsoft. So I think I'm going to default this question to Michael. And the question is, what is it about that's different about working for CSEO as compared to some other teams that you may have worked on within Microsoft? And if there's other people that have experiences working for different teams and then they came over to CSEO, and there's some things you liked about working for CSEO, if you can share that with us as well.
Yeah, thank you, Will. Yeah, I have an interesting story because I worked for almost a decade in product groups where the charter was very rigid and very well defined. We worked in, and those were waterfall days, 18 months to 24-month releases. So the technology, the charter, and everything was already picked for you. You worked in an org that was 500 to 1,000 people. When I came to CSEO, which was at that time called MSIT, I got to pick and choose the problem I wanted to solve. There was a sense of autonomy and empowerment where I could say, okay, we're going to build this service and let's pick this technology, this stack. And as an engineering leader, I could work with the team. It was shorter cycles. It was still waterfall days, but I got to solution and build and architect and engineer the solution. So it was slightly different because those product groups, not that it was bad, they had very deep rigor. They had commitments to the outside world and dates to meet. So there was very little flexibility. It was quite rigid. And today, I like to not throw them under the bus. They work in an agile world where they do multiple releases a day with Azure. So it's a different world. So it's still cool to work there now. They've got a lot of flexibility, but in those days, it was different. And the beauty about coming to CSEO, I like a challenge. And we were literally on this 10-year journey, move to cloud and become like a product more than IT. And I can be honest and tell you, Microsoft has no IT today. And just to give you some context, that's quite a radical statement to make. We do run LOB systems, we do run critical businesses for HR, finance, legal, sales, but the power that we have is we've moved to building extensions to products. And this is all driven because of Azure. So the difference between CSEO now is with move to Azure, we don't have labs, we don't have hardware, we don't have infrastructure, we don't have network capacity, power planning that we used to have. We don't have release managers and release teams that used to run release deployment testing for us. Every team is empowered in this DevOps world that CSEO has, where you click a button, you release to cloud. I don't wait with all the overheads of going through different teams. Doesn't mean we got rid of all those people. They had to learn new skills and adapt and do different things. But I like this cool, fast-paced world. And I like to close on one thing, which is I like to tell people that I feel like I work for a startup. It is no longer this big brick and mortar IBM 50-year-old company. Microsoft moves faster with 200,000 people than I could ever dream of. And so the autonomy, the flexibility, the breadth of technology that CSEO gave me that made me stay here and didn't want to move on after this. I moved to different teams, but it's the diversity of opportunity in CSEO that the differentiator between a product group, core product group, than CSEO.
Excellent. So I'm going to do some sort of rapid fire questions, and I'm going to direct them to specific team members to try to get everybody to sort of share their piece. So thank you for that, Michael, first of all. So my next question is more of a cultural question, and I'm going to fire this question at Patience. So this question is about, do you feel that you can be yourself, culturally speaking, as a minority at Microsoft? Just your thoughts there.
Yes. More and more, I would say. I wouldn't have answered yes if you would have asked me maybe 5 years ago. Now, more and more, as I was talking about the culture transformation at Microsoft, I feel that I can be myself. But I also learned that I also need to have the tools. I mean, it's not just Microsoft, it's also something about each of us where we need to learn how we can be our authentic self and still be successful. So that's something that I'm learning as well. But Microsoft is helping me by also spreading that same type of culture around where everybody is held accountable as much as possible to respect each other and to ensure that everybody can be their authentic self.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mix in some questions that I'm seeing in the chat. So for all of the attendees, if you have some questions, feel free to drop those questions in the chat window. I want to make sure I address some of those questions. So I saw a cool question from David Gonzalez, and that is, what innovative projects do you have going on? And I think I'm going to default this one to Jorge.
There's many. Really, we get to play with a whole bunch of different technologies and innovate with the tip of the spear, right? I like to tell this story because it's very emblematic of, I'm pretty sure, the day-to-day of a lot of engineers here at the organization. Many years ago, I got a chance to work on a project, and we got approached by a product group with something called Red Dog. We had no idea what it was. Hey, can you build your solution over in Red Dog? We want to prototype some line of business applications, and we want to just prove out that this thing works. Well, Red Dog turns out to be Azure. So I was one of the first ones to actually play with Azure way back in the day, before it was actually announced. And just like that, there's brand new technologies that come out all the time, whether it's cognitive services that we're using right now to scan a whole bunch of different guidance from different lawyers for different cases, and work to automate how do we provide self-service to other folks, right, across the company. There's not a lot of things that we don't get to do because of that level of breadth and the access to the technology and the infrastructure to go and execute. Particularly now with the cloud, we have a lot of flexibility to scale up and scale down different prototypes and things like that. And we are able to turn things around super fast. To Michael's point, we work like a startup. And that's totally true, because we have that flexibility to basically from the ground up start from new, and we reinvent a specific process. We digitally transform the way that our business operates. I love that we have this new approach, and I don't think I've heard it too much on this call, which surprises me because everybody at Microsoft talks about this thing, growth mindset. We go into a lot of meetings with our partners in the business that run the processes with that growth mindset and say, hey, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? Don't give me requirements. Let's talk about your goals, right? And then as we understand it, we're able to bring our engineering mindset to solve problems. So we play with technologies, we play with processes, we have resources to be creative and execute on. Many stuff I can tell you about, many stuff I can't, because it's internal. And I'm sure Wilfredo will be tied a little bit more than I would.
And I would like to add what Jorge said. You know, there's the edge where a lot of the market is in terms of new technologies. There's the cutting edge, which in our case is kind of like a lot of the internal technologies that we're developing and working with. And there's the bleeding edge, where it's a lot of the Microsoft researchers are, where there's a lot of patents and innovation happening any day in terms of machine learning, quantum computing, and things that you guys would not even imagine are being researched right now. So in that question of innovation, you can imagine that there's a breadth of experiences that go from what is on the market right now, what we're playing with that will come in the market maybe in a year or less, and then the stuff that is still in MSR that we're still cooking, baking, and trying to learn and innovate there.
And we are used as a test bed for many of those technologies. They come to us and say, hey, we have some stuff brewing, but we want to make sure that it actually works. Can we work with you to try this out? And those projects are always very, very cool.
Excellent. So we saw one question about where our opportunities located. So so I know we have primary representation from managers for different teams within CSEO. So if you might want to chime in on where your opportunities are located, what it looks like currently with COVID-19, our folks working remote. If someone could speak to that.
Yeah, so today we have two major development centers in CSEO, in Charlotte, North Carolina, and here in Redmond. With COVID, most people are out. Actually, I would venture to say the vast majority of the folks in CSE are working remotely. So there's a lot of flexibility going on right now. Most of the roles within CSE sit within either Redmond or our Hyderabad campus in India. I'm not going to say that all of them do, and the flexibility of working remote will continue to be a team by team situation. So it depends on sort of the team that you work with, how they're set up, and things like that. Oh, sorry, forgot one other one. Vancouver, British Columbia is another one that we have presence on. I don't know if I missed any of them. Dan, Wilfredo, Michael, patience.
I have Redmond and Canada in my case.
There's a couple that are, I mean, we have stuff in Fargo and stuff that are team specific, but they're not the major campus hubs.
So I wanted to give a chance to introduce one other person if she's still on. So Michael, you introduced a new team member that you brought on.
Yes, Abril Gonzalez, and maybe she can give us. Yeah, Abril, first I want to open up by introducing you, but she's 1 year in the company, the new baby, I would say. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to give her that great experience because of COVID. So I'd like to hear what it's been like despite this tumultuous year.
Hey, hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh,
Welcome,
yeah,
welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's been fun and challenging, I'd say. I started out in January last year, so I got 2 whole months of going into the office and living my dream life, and then I had that taken away, as we all did. But still working with my team, and we get to chat every day and do video calls, and yeah, it's still been a super fun experience, and I've learned and grown a lot. I'm super thankful and feel very blessed to be working here.
So where are you from originally?
I'm from Monterrey, Mexico. Yeah, same as Jorge.
And so what were some of your first assignments like, and what is your role on the team as an individual contributor?
Yeah, I work on the O365 solutions team. My team builds SharePoint web parts for internal use within Microsoft. So it's mostly front-end development, which I really enjoy doing. I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Yeah, just so what some of your assignments have been so far as you've kind of onboarded with the team.
Yeah, I actually onboarded. My onboarding process was a lot of during this first 2 months that I got to go to the office. I did some pair programming with Kendra, my coworker that has become one of my best friends. And then after that, most of the onboarding process was fixing bugs so I could get familiar with the code base. And eventually I got my own features and stories to work on. Yeah.
Excellent. And so did you come into Microsoft as a university hire or as an experienced hire? And then kind of how did you get your foot in the door?
Yeah, I joined as a university hire. I didn't do any internships here before. I interviewed twice. I didn't get in on my first try, but I kept practicing and honing my skills and practicing whiteboard interviews until I finally made it here. Well worth it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, right? Because we do a lot of events in partnership with Microsoft, and sometimes we have people from previous events that are super excited and want a chance to interview again with Microsoft. And then there's not always either a match with the team, or maybe they had to do a little bit of, like you said, practicing for whiteboarding. So I want to encourage everyone that, like I said, these opportunities are real opportunities within CSEO at Microsoft. If you don't get on initially, continue, like April said, continue to sharpen your skills, learn from the interview process, because there have been people that have attended more than just one of our events that finally found the right fit with the right team, and they had the right skill set match, and they got on a team working with Microsoft. So I just wanted to reiterate that, and thank you for bringing that up and sharing your experience. Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes. So what I wanted to do in this last 5 minutes, typically I'll hand it off to Jesse to speak on the process, but let me speak quickly on what I will do on behalf of the candidates. So what we have as a part of our process is, if you're interested, and hopefully you are interested in interviewing with Microsoft, I'm going to email you a form or a link to a form for potentially landing an interview with the CSEO team. And so what I'll ask that you do is brush up or tighten up your LinkedIn profile. because that'll be one of the questions on the form. So you know, as Jesse is reviewing candidates, you know, he can check out quickly your LinkedIn profile. But I'll ask that you fill out that form if you're interested in interviewing. And then the folks at Microsoft will review those submissions. And then, you know, if your skill sets align with the opportunities within CSEO, then they will reach out to you for a phone screen and then an interview loop after that. And then hopefully we'll be hearing back about, you know, offers and hires. So at a high level, that's what the process looks like. So Jesse, I don't know if you want to add anything on to what I just explained.
Yeah, I would just add basically, even if you don't have 7+ years, don't hesitate to fill out the form. We do have opportunities for folks less than 7 years from a previous Trabajamos event that we're still looking to fill for final round interviews. So plenty of opportunity. And then for technical program managers, we're not necessarily hiring via this event, but we do have a couple events coming up that we will be hiring for. So look out for an email from either myself or from Will for the future events. I believe we have one actually on Friday or Thursday coming up.
Yep. So lots of opportunities. We have at least, you know, a couple more, at least not at least a couple more. We've got a lot more events to come, but I really want to put in a good word for the CSEO team. They've invested heavily in bringing in diverse talent into their organization. So obviously they're very serious about making hires from this event. I think the organization is a really cool organization that has sort of a renewed focus on you know, product level quality in the software. Sounds like there's lots of opportunities within CSEO for you all to be a part of. So I really want to thank the CSEO team, and you know, I want to give the last word to our keynote speaker. So if you have any last, you know, advice for the candidates, you know, around the interview process or anything you'd like to share, Patience, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Will and Jesse, for sharing all the steps that the candidate needs to do. So really, I mean, go for it. At this point, my favorite motto is you have nothing to lose, but all to gain. And hopefully everything that we shared today motivated you to work for Microsoft. Again, I mean, strongly believe in Microsoft, not just saying it because I need to say it. Been there 15 years. There's a lot of other companies here in this Puget Sound area. I mean, we have Amazon, we have Facebook, we have Google, and I'm still at Microsoft. And I've been approached by other companies, but I'm still at Microsoft. So just to let you know that, I mean, it's a great company to work for, and I hope you will choose it and apply for it.
Excellent. Wanted to thank everybody. I wanted to apologize. Dan, I wanted to include you in the panel discussion. So if you have any last words as well.
I would just say that, you know, don't look at job descriptions and get discouraged because you might not have that level of experience. You should always apply to a job that you're interested in. If there's a requirement that's needed because of the position, it will be on us to look at that instead of you thinking you don't have those credentials, because we'd rather see the candidates and decide to, you know, pursue those opportunities rather than just not know about it. So don't ever be discouraged about how you apply, and practice your interviewing skills because it's the only way you're going to get better.
Thank you. So again, thanks to everyone from the Microsoft team for taking the time out to share your experiences, to share your journey, and all of the reasons why CSEO is a great place to work within Microsoft. And also I wanted to thank all of the candidates that have joined us, because if you guys don't come to these events, then, you know, we might not have these type of events. So I really want to thank you all for taking the time out to learn more about Microsoft and CSEO. I know as technology professionals, you all get hit up all the time with different types of opportunities, but obviously I think you probably see the same thing that I see, that Microsoft is really a great place to work. They value diversity. They value, you know, skill sets from a variety of backgrounds. So I highly encourage you to pursue the interview opportunity after this event. So you'll be hearing from me in email. But again, thank you to everyone involved. So with that, I'd like to say good night.
Thanks,
Thank you all.
everyone.
Okay,
Thank you, and best of luck, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.